Hi everyone, I'm just doing an addendum to my previous video, which was a lesson in law for Michael Gove, but really for this so-called government criminal cabal that's now squatting at number 10, unelected. So I've just explained in my previous video about the threat here now of Operation Yellowhammer being triggered, as Mr. Gove has stated here. He will be implementing the next stage of Operation Yellowhammer, as they fully intend to leave the EU on the 31st of October, it seems, without a deal, so they will be breaking the law. And they're going to do that through the ERG, which consists of Tory MPs, basically, as it explains in the headline here, Brexiteer MPs. And they're going to try and do it first through a private members bill. Now, I had originally intended to cover this in the other video, but it's the early hours of the morning and this news had only just come in, and I actually forgot to include it in the links here. So I'm just going to cover, because they're saying they're going to bring this private members bill, so I'm just going to now, for the British people, to cover this private members bills and show you what it's all about. So you've got private members bills, are public bills introduced by MPs and lords who are not government ministers. So they're using the ERG to do it, you see. This Eurosceptic think tank. As with other public bills, their purpose is to change the law as it applies to the general population. A minority of private members' bills become law, but by creating publicity around an issue, they may affect legislation indirectly. So like other public bills, private members' bills can be introduced in either house and must go through the same set stages. However, as less time is allocated to these bills, it is less likely that they will proceed through all the stages. To introduce a bill in the House of Commons, a member needs to provide its short title, its long title, which describes briefly what it does. Complete texts are not necessary, and some private members' bills are never published in full. There are three ways of introducing private members' bills in the House of Commons: the ballot, the 10-minute rule, and presentation. Ballot bills have the best chance of becoming law, as they get priority for the limited amount of debating time available. The names of members applying for a bill are drawn in a ballot held on the second sitting Thursday of a parliamentary session. Normally, the first 7 ballot bills are most likely to get a day's debate. The first reading, formal presentation, no debate, of ballot bills takes place on the 5th sitting Wednesday of a parliamentary session. The ballot draw for the 2017-19 parliamentary session took place on Thursday 29th of June 2017 in Committee Room 10 and is available to watch online on Parliament Live. 10-minute rule bills are often an opportunity for members to voice an opinion on a subject or aspect of existing legislation rather than a serious attempt to get a bill passed. So it doesn't look like it's going to go through the 10-minute rule. Any member may introduce a bill in this way as long as he or she has previously given notice of their intention to do so. Members formally introduce the title of the bill but do not speak in support of it. They rarely become law. And then you've got private members' bills in the Lords are usually introduced through a ballot held on the day after the state opening of a new session of Parliament. In order to enter the ballot, peers must submit a draft of their bill, including its short and long title and all clauses and schedules, to the Legislation Office. The ballot orders the way in which these bills receive their first reading. You know, time consideration for private members' bills in the Commons. 13 Fridays in each session. So it isn't feasible, is it, that they're going to get this that this is really going to be through a private member's bill, as is stated here, and that was what I wanted. That is what I meant to cover. But there was so much information I was sharing, and I actually omitted it because the fact is that it is very unlikely that they're going to get this new law criminalising any attempts of British citizens reaching out to EU officials for help to stop this hard Brexit, or their equivalent of a hard Brexit, you know, Johnson's rags and bones of a deal. Realistically, the private members bill is not going to do it, is it? The private members bill is not going to do it. A type of private members bill in attempt to kick-start the new law. So how are they going to do it? You know, the only way is, as Michael Gove has stated here, implementing the next stage of Operation Yellowhammer. Because once you get martial law, okay, that is when the government can introduce new laws. They can amend any act of parliament except the Human Rights Act for up to 21 days. So if they bring in martial law, they can actually suspend parliament, because, you know, they'll declare a state of emergency, pull us out on the 31st, and then just declare a state of emergency, declare martial law, and that'll be it. That'll be the end of Parliament. That's how close we are. You know, I am not being over the top or scaremongering here. This is the government that's scaremongering we the people, and even Parliament, because, you know, it just isn't feasible, is it? What I've just read to you about private members' bills and how long it takes for them to get through. It's never going to get through on a private members' bill. They might be able to introduce the idea, but nothing's going to happen in time for the 31st of October unless Gove here implements the next stage of Operation Yellowhammer, preparing for the no-deal Brexit. These are very, very, very serious times. We are on the brink now, possibly of civil war. I mean, we're already going, there's already been a civil war raging over our heads. Goodness knows what levels of coercion and pressures have been brought to bear on members of Parliament. How many of them are being threatened, coerced, blackmailed, bribed with threats. This is, you know, it is a very dangerous situation that we are in. I don't trust them. I don't trust the Express, which are obviously pro-Brexit. And, you know, they don't want, you know, Brexit will take 6 years to complete, even if MPs finally pass Boris's deal, you know. They want a hard Brexit. That is what they want. And now they're going to thwart this Letwin agreement, aren't they? And the only way that they can do it now is by breaking the law to, you know, bring Britain out, hard Brexit. He said we're coming out on the 31st. He said we are leaving Europe on the 31st of October. That's what Michael Gove has stated. We are leaving Europe on the 31st of October. Well, apparently we can't leave without a deal. So how are they going to break the law? They can only do it by martial law and then amending the Ben Act. Isn't it? That's the only way they can do it, is by martial law and amending the Ben Act to allow them to have their no-deal Brexit. There we go. Speaking to Sky Sophie Ridge on Sunday, Mr Gove reiterated his comments. He said, "We are going to leave by October 31st. We have the means and ability to do so, and people who, yesterday we had some people who voted for delay, voted explicitly to try to frustrate this process, to drag it out. We must leave. Prime Minister's determination is absolute, and I am with him in this. We must leave by October 31st. We must leave. I tell you, martial law. Martial law. Because like I say, what has been told to the British public there about, oh, you know, they're going to use a private members bill, blah, blah, blah. No, they're not. They're going to be introducing martial law. A private members bill that I've just read it out to you. There's absolutely no way that this private members bill is going to stop the Letwin Act, is it? By criminalising British MPs that managed to get it introduced. It just is not going to happen. So, you know, Parliament's voted for it. And it looks like now they're going to use the Yellowhammer operation, the directives in there, to pull us out on the 31st anyway, introduce martial law, that's it. Parliament gone. Democracy gone. I mean, according to the law, martial law can only last for 21 days. For up to 21 days. But who's to say that? They'll just say, oh, sorry, no, it's going to last longer than 21 days. Who's going to stop them? When they've possibly got corporate troops on our streets. It is so serious. I am so concerned. And it could end up with British MPs being imprisoned. Anybody protests will be banned. You'll have no right to protest. This is it. You know, this is what a coup does come down to, military action in the end. And this monster is just getting bigger and bigger and fiercer and nastier, and now it's showing its claws. Are we going to wait till we see its teeth? I think we have to come out now. These things are going to have to happen in this country. We are literally going to have to do in Iceland, I believe, in order to stop this. We need a second referendum. We're living in the 21st century, an educated population. I'm sorry, there is absolutely no way that the British people should be expected to accept the results of a referendum which was based on lies and organised by criminals using corporate powers, social engineering as a weapon, a tool to persuade people to vote against their own interests, to such a degree that when people it took people 3 years to realise exactly what's going on and what Brexit is really all about, and the damages of it, and how the terrible suffering it's going to inflict on the people, the average British citizen. that they don't want it now. They want a second referendum. Scotland's threatening to break away from Britain. Ireland's breaking away from Britain. But they don't want to give us a second referendum because they know very well we'll vote to stay in the EU. They know that without a doubt. They're expecting Parliament to act on the advice of a electorate that was lied to. That is no way to run a democracy. Certainly not in the 21st century. That is not democracy. Lying to people, fear-mongering, instilling xenophobia, and with threats of martial law, because that is the most serious thing. You know, it's got to be our dread, you know. And the point that I made about abuses of power with men with guns, I mean, British troops maybe at first, but where will the troops be fought from? You know, once they get the British troops, then next minute, possibly DynCorp troops. If the British troops turn round and say, well, actually, we're not doing this, then what's it going to be? DynCorp troops? Corporate troops protecting their corporate tax havens? You know, and as I've stated in my previous video, it's what far-right corporate interests do. They attack and break trade unions. That's what they do. Our trade unions that uphold our rights and regulations to protect the workforce, the public, democracy and the environment. That's what corporate interests do. Corporate capitalist interests stand against our trade unions. They don't like unions. That's what the EU is, a free trade union. And it acts like a trade union in the sense it upholds the workers' rights. So, you know, please don't let this idea that, oh yeah, you know, they're going to try and use this private members bill to get this through, this act through. No, I don't believe they are. I think this is just a red herring, subterfuge. Because there's absolutely no way that they're going to be able to change the law or kickstart a new law. The only way that they can do it and get out of the EU by the 31st of October is through the next stage of Operation Yellowhammer. I really hope that I'm wrong. I hope that I am just so on edge now, and I'm just, you know, overly concerned, overly suspicious because of everything that's happened. But I really, you know, I really don't think I am. I've been right all along about the tenacity of these people and just how far they will go and what they're prepared to do to get their Brexit. To strip us of our rights, to dump us back into the 18th century. What they've been threatening since Thatcher. Victorian Britain. Except even further back than that, you know, back to the 1700s basically. 1750s after Enclosure Acts. That is literally what they've done. It is enclosure all over again, 21st century style. Except this time we've not got common lands to enclose. Well, they've so privatised most of our national parks and what have you anyway. They're privatising them like nobody's business. But seizure of our public properties, our public assets, it's the same thing. that was owned by the common people have been seized by private interests. That's exactly what they did in enclosure. Our social security was then our common lands that had been ours for time, and then they took them away. They privatised them. 2 million people starved to death in Britain. Over 1 million people starved to death in Ireland. Go and read your history, people. Why do you think after the war people demanded social security in a welfare state? Because we couldn't go back to living off our common lands, could we? The only way was to have an economic system that provided us with more or less the same, a subsistence living, if we couldn't get a job. If employers were refusing to pay us a living wage, well, we could turn round and say, no, actually, we'll just live off our own land then. We're not slaving away, leaving our children with strangers, never having any time, being used like slaves. We're going to have to devote our time to growing our own food and raising our own livestock. That is how people survived. And it was privatised. Enclosure Acts. Check them out. That's why our factories, first factories, were largely manned by children, because most of the workforce were dead. The adults had died of starvation. The orphanages were full of their children. Let the yoke be put on the children. Was it Pick the Younger said? So, I just wanted to clarify that in case people, read through the thing and thought, oh, no, they're going to, it isn't, it ain't going to bring in martial law. They're going to do it through this private members bill. No. They're not going to do it through a private members bill. It's actually impossible, really, isn't it? Because certainly Parliament is not going to vote. If they couldn't get the Brexit, Boris Johnson's ridiculous Brexit deal through, then, how would they get this through to start criminalising British MPs and British citizens for consulting with the EU Parliament and EU members about what to do about this horror, actually, that has been hanging over our heads for 3 years now. And in fact, the horror we've been living under through this Tory government. So anyway, thank you for taking time to listen. Please share the information. You don't have to share my videos, but share the links. Talk about the evidence and the concerns that are exposed in them. Because, we're talking about our children's future. And I tell you, when they grow up and they find out the level of debt they've been saddled with, and the fact that all their rights were just thrown away because, well, basically the population were persuaded to vote for something on the strength of a pack of lies and on the strength of xenophobic fears and racial hatred. What are our children? I tell you, this generation of children today will be literally spitting on our graves. And we need to stand up for their rights. We've enjoyed those rights. And they're our children's rightful inheritance. They're asking us to deny our children their rightful inheritance that we fought and won 2 world wars for. And we cannot do it. We cannot do it. I will tell you now, Michael Gove, we are not leaving the EU on the 31st, because if you even dare now, I tell you, you are in for a battle like nothing on earth. Because I tell you something, the British people, the very calm people, quite very tolerant people actually, largely. But I tell you now, and you face that righteous wrath, there is nothing on earth like it. And it will condemn you to hell. Okay? The fires of our righteous wrath will condemn you to hell. And I can tell you, from my own personal knowledge of the way this universe works, that death is no escape from that wrath. Physical death is no escape. You will go to hell for what you are doing and what you have done, the evil that you've inflicted. Not just on the British people, but on the people of this planet. So anyway, love and God bless to everybody. I just wanted to, as I say, clarify that because I realised I'd forgot to include it in the previous video, which was quite long anyway. It was 37 minutes long, so you know, I didn't want it going into 40 minutes. So what can I say? Look, stay strong, take courage. Okay, it's them who are scared. Remember this, it's them, it's the corporate interest, the privileged elite that are scared of the EU, right? And they're scared of they're afraid of the law, and they want to control the law in order to break it, in order to act outside the law, in order to scrap our rights, in order to break our trade unions, because that's what they do. Thatcher started with the trade unions of Britain. The steel workers, the miners, the transport industry, all the services that now have been privatised, all these unions are broke. They're all broken. And now the last union is the EU free trade union. That again, it's the same thing, like I say, upholds all our rights. Now the global corporations want to break it and smash it. We need to stop them. We defeated fascism through 2 world wars. This war, it's not a war of bombs and bullets. It's a war of words. It's a war of rights. It's a war of for our children's future.